As the Dolphins prepare to extend quarterback Tua Tagovailoa and move beyond his rookie contract, we look at the history of Super Bowl winning franchises and what a quarterback on a rookie contract does or does not mean for your ability to win one.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It's your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting. You can find our shows on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tip of the cap to our everydayers because it is your team every day. Today on the show, we are looking at Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. And I know this is one of the discussion points around the debate about paying Tua Tagovailoa and the perception of if he is a good enough quarterback to win a Super Bowl or not. All of that aside, the economics of team building is where our focus is today. And we're looking at second contract and third contract quarterbacks versus rookie contract quarterbacks. And what is a history of paid quarterbacks mean for your ability to contend for and ultimately win a championship. And one of the things that I think is really important to outline here as we get ready to have this conversation is to identify the salary cap era of football and what the salary cap's evolution has looked like, because it has changed very rapidly. The salary cap did not exist in the NFL until 1994. So anything before 1993 was the pre-salary cap era of the NFL. And the first year that the salary cap opened in 1994, which was 30 years ago, we've had 30 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, or 30 Super Bowls. A few quarterbacks have won more than one in that stretch. 30 Super Bowls. The first year in 1994, the salary cap was $34.6 million. Think about that. $34.6 million was the entire team's salary cap. You fast forward to 2010, the owners opt out of the CBA. There's an uncapped season. The previous year's salary cap was $123 million. So in 2009, the cap was half of what it is today. The rapid acceleration, the only time you've seen a regression in the salary cap, was the 2021 year as the league worked through the COVID-19 pandemic, as that first happened and managed to get a full season off without having to cancel games. It's the only time in 30 years the salary cap has gone down, and it went down about 8% that year. Just so happens that aligned with when the Dolphins were trying to make their own strategic leap from tearing their entire roster down. And there's no question, I think that the dip in the salary cap kind of complicated the 2021 season for Miami, but that's neither here nor there. I say all that to say, salary cap this year over $255 million. As recently as 2013, when it was $123.6 million, 10 years ago, the salary cap was half of what it is today. So looking at raw numbers and salary cap hits, probably not the most effective way to digest your investment in individual players because of this rapid acceleration of money that teams have at their disposal for bookkeeping purposes. So instead, the way that we are going to look at quarterbacks and their investment within the team is we're going to look at the percentage of the salary cap that their cap hit was responsible for in the year in which the team won the Super Bowl. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, I got great news for you. I've put the whole thing together, and we're going to share it, and we're going to look at it. If you're listening, I will paint this picture as best as I possibly can. In 2023, the salary cap was $224.8 million. The cap went up almost 8%, 7.97% from the previous year. The quarterback who won the Super Bowl was Patrick Mahomes. He had a quarterback salary cap charge of $37.13 million, which was equal to 16.5% of the Chiefs' salary cap this past season. You can go all the way down. Kansas City twice in a row, the Rams with Stafford, Tom Brady on the Bucs, Mahomes again, Brady on the Patriots, Carson Wentz, the majority starter for Philadelphia. He was on a rookie contract. You got Tom Brady again, Peyton Manning, Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco, Eli Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli and Peyton again, Tom Brady again, Brad Johnson with the Bucs in 2002. Tom Brady for the first time, Trent Dilfer, who played about half that season's worth of starts. It was him and Aaron Banks were the two starting quarterbacks for that Ravens team with that legendary defense. Kurt Warner, John Elway twice, Brett Favre in 96, Troy Aikman in 95, and Steve Young in 1994. That's it. That's the salary cap era of football. Those are the quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls in 30 years. What's interesting is you look at the distribution. 20 of the 30 Super Bowls were won by quarterbacks that were not Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, which when you boil it down that way is a little bit of an eye-opening number, right? But at the same time, the percent cap of quarterbacks not named Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes when the year that they won the Super Bowl was an investment of 7.27% of that year's salary cap. Quarterbacks not on rookie contracts are responsible for 23 out of the last 30 Super Bowls. In the salary cap era, there have been 7 quarterbacks who have won a Super Bowl on a rookie contract. And that includes Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. That includes Kurt Warner coming from the CFL. That includes a mid-round pick in Russell Wilson with the Seahawks. It includes Carson Wentz, who didn't play in the Super Bowl and is a unique situation because the last 2 rookie contract quarterbacks to win in Wentz and Mahomes, and Wentz has the asterisk because Nick Foles played that year in the playoffs, but Wentz would have been the NFL MVP if he didn't get hurt late in the season. Is both of those teams aggressively traded up? Remember, Philly traded with Miami and then traded up again to get to 2 to draft Wentz. They were picking 15 or 16. Kansas City was picking in the 20s. They came up to 10 to take Mahomes. Russell Wilson, the third most recent rookie contract quarterback to win a Super Bowl, he won a first-round pick. He was a mid-round pick. You got to go back to Ben Roethlisberger in 2005 for the last quarterback on a rookie contract that was a first-round pick with a team that organically just picked there to win a Super Bowl. And then the only other 2 in the salary cap era was Kurt Warner, who signed for $750,000 because he played in the CFL or the Arena League, excuse me. And then Tom Brady, who was a 6th-round draft pick. So I'm a little embarrassed here. I'll be completely honest. I've been very much talking about winning within a rookie contract window and how that makes life a lot easier for you. And maybe that is true. Look at the Houston Texans and what they were able to do this offseason. They know early CJ Stroud is good. Let's go trade for Stephon Diggs. Let's go out and get Danielle Hunter and add all these pieces on both sides of the ball because we've got a diminished rookie contract quarterback charge for the next 3 years against the cap until we got to give him a contract extension that we're already anticipating having to pay. So let's make the next few years count. That is true. It makes it a lot easier to put a more talented team together. But as far as tangibly winning championships, 7 out of 30 is not very good odds. And anything before that, there was no salary cap anyway. Going to get a little bit more into the percent cap trends of the salary cap era of the NFL. And then in that turn, we need to start to project the salary cap forward as we get ready for what we're expecting to be a contract extension for Tua Tagovailoa and have a conversation about what those salary cap figures can be expected to look like. I did a whole contract proposal. I've made some amendments to it from March based on the recent quarterback contract like Jared Goff. Maybe it's cost you a few $1 million in the grand scheme of several years of contracts, but we got to next continue to look at who got, never mind just rookie contracts, who had big salary cap commitments, and what is the salary cap going to look like as it continues to balloon at this really aggressive rate? And what percentages does that leave teams to work with based off of the historical track record of what is an investment that's big, but not too big to win a championship? That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. Going to the game's not supposed to be stressful, and we now know the Dolphins' schedule. So if you are planning on being a very busy Dolphins fan this fall and heading to a bunch of games, make sure you use Gametime to make sure you have a stress-free ticket buying experience. You get last-minute deals up to 60% off buying tickets on Gametime for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. You get flash deals and zone deals and all-in pricing, so you can see the exact total before you put the tickets into your cart. No surprise fees when you go to checkout. You can see the view from your seat with a panoramic view before you commit and purchase. And with just a few taps, you can get tickets delivered directly to your phone. So take the stress out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today for last-minute tickets with the lowest prices, guaranteed. I was very surprised as I actually did the research and I went back and pulled all the numbers. So the full numbers are this. The average salary cap commitment for a Super Bowl winning quarterback in the salary cap era of football is 8.79% of the salary cap. 5 of the last 6 quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl. Tom Brady in 2018 had a salary cap charge of 12.42% of that year's salary cap. Tom Brady with the Bucs in 2020 had a 12.6% charge against that year's salary cap. Matthew Stafford with the Rams had a 10.96% salary cap charge against that year's salary cap. Patrick Mahomes, the last 2 seasons, 17.19 and 16.5. That is hefty numbers for 4 of the last 5 championships. That is a grand total, an average of almost 14%, 13.9% for 4 of the last 5 years. And the only one being the outlier was Patrick Mahomes the first time he won on a rookie contract. You extend that to the last 10 years. Peyton Manning for Denver in 2015 was 12.2%. Tom Brady was 11.3% in 2014. So 7 of the last 10 quarterbacks to win the Super Bowl, 7 of the last 10 Super Bowls had a quarterback that won, I should say, because you had Brady and Mahomes as repeat offenders in here. Salary cap charges of effectively 11% or less, or 11% or more. So this narrative that I myself have also been perpetuating, that you have to have a rookie contract to maximize your window, that's not the reality of what we have seen. If you just filter in order of the biggest percent cap charges, I think what's very eye-opening is a vast majority of the last 10 to 15 years, the top half, most recent half, has more and more big percent cap charges. And that makes sense when you consider what the old guard was with Manning and Brady, and now Mahomes coming in, and it's a little bit more dynasty-ish driven as compared to you had the 2000s where you had Dallas at the end of their reign as a dynasty. San Francisco at the end of their reign as a dynasty in the mid-90s. And then you had the Packers that won one in there. And then you had Pittsburgh in the early 2000s and Tampa Bay and Baltimore's teams with great defenses, with kind of holdovers on offense that got it done. So I understand to some degree why it is like that. But it is also very eye-opening to see there are only 1, 2, 3 of the top 12 biggest percent charges against the cap from a percent of cap perspective that have been outside of the last 2011, the second to most recent collective bargaining agreement. So all of this focus on going into a second contract with a quarterback, yes and no. I think one thing that's important for perspective is I know some of the questions have been, well, what happens if and when you give Tua Tagovailoa a contract extension and his cap charge is at 40%? If Tua Tagovailoa with a new contract has a salary cap charge that starts with a 4, and it's not just $4 million, and that's not going to happen for the next 4 years, you need to fire all of your cap people and all of the people that were in charge of creating and crafting that contract. I know Daniel Jones is one that was a 4-year, $160 million contract that was given out just last year. And it was a disaster from the jump. And he's got a $40-something million cap charge right now. You could cut that cap figure in half if you were willing to restructure that contract. But the Giants aren't restructuring that contract because they now know Daniel Jones is not in, and they're going to try to get out of that contract as quickly as possible, which I would presume is going to be a get through this year type situation. Wouldn't be surprised if Drew Lock ends up starting over top of him. And then in 2025, I think their dead cap charge for moving on from Daniel Jones is $22 million. They'll do that. But if you restructure him now to say, oh, well, now we're not eating up $45 million in cap space for Daniel Jones, now you're stuck with him for probably 2025 as well. And they're not interested in doing that. So the question now becomes, what does it look like moving forward? Because this is what's relevant for Miami, right? This is where you're at this point in time, and you know the salary cap is $255.4 million. It went up 13.6% versus last season. That's a large number. So when you try to determine what the cap growth is going to be, I chose to reel it in a little bit. The NFL went up 7.97% from 2022 to 2023. And they went up 14% from 2021 to 2022. But that comes with the asterisk of you had the dip of 8% the previous year with the COVID impact and not having the revenue share from ticket sales the way that you normally would. So 14.08% in 2022 is a little misleading. And you don't want to just sit here and assume, yes, they've got a ton of TV dollars that are coming in, and the NFL is doing a great job of making sure every streaming service on the face of the planet is going to have a game. So there's going to be more rev share that's coming in as a part of that then in turn gets kicked out in the salary cap. But I don't want to just sit here and assume that it's going to go up 13.5% every single year. That's irresponsible. That's irresponsible budgeting. So what I am doing is I looked at every year since 94, what percent the cap has gone up, and I took the average of it. And that average is about 7.13% on average annually. There's a few times where that got really weird. It first got weird in 98 when it went up 26% from $41.4 million to $52.3 million. It got weird again in 2006 when it went up 19% from 85.5 to 102. Then you had the year in 2010 when the owners opted out of the CBA, so they had an uncapped year, and then you had to come back in, and you effectively stayed parallel from 2009 to 2012 before it started spiking again. And then, of course, you had the COVID year, and then this most recent jump. 7.13% is the average. So if you take the next 5 years and you assume that the salary cap is going to go up at the same percent rate as it has historically since the salary cap era started in 1994. even if that's excessively conservative, but that's kind of the point. Here's the numbers you get. The salary cap for 2025 would project to be $273.6 million versus $255.4, so go up $18.2 million. That's 7.13%. The following year, in 2026, it would project to go up $19.5 million, up to $293.1. 2027 would be $314 million. 2028 would be $336.4 million. And 2029 would be $360.4 million. Salary cap growth year over year. I went to 2029 because if you are getting a hypothetical contract extension for Tua Tagovailoa, you probably expect it's a 5-year extension on top of the year that he already has. So it would be 6 years under contract, which would be through 2029. And of course, you wouldn't have all that guaranteed money in that stretch. You know, it's not fully guaranteed through 2029, but it would at least probably guarantee he's your quarterback through 2026, 2027 at the earliest is probably when you could take an exit ramp off of this magnitude of a contract if you dealt or deemed it was necessary. The next question. What does the average quarterback charge against the cap at 8.79% of any year in the salary cap era? That salary cap charge, what does that look like with this growth in the salary cap? Like what is the expected average charge against the cap for the next few years that you would expect to be a commitment to a quarterback for you to be able to win a Super Bowl? And then where does the expected Tua Tagovailoa cap charges based on kind of the stratosphere of dollars that we're talking about? Where do those years put you? That's next. We're on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. Stick with us. It is winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Had a lot of fun doing this research. Just because it has definitely made me recalibrate my own expectations as far as like realistically applying team building into a winning window. I've opened up the next 2 years on the chart if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, don't worry, I'm going to read them to you. We mentioned this year's salary cap is $255.4 million. The average salary cap charge for a Super Bowl winning quarterback is 8.79% of that year's salary cap, which would make if it was an average quarterback cap charge, this year's Super Bowl winning quarterback with a budget effectively of $22.5 million against the cap. That number will go to $24 million in 2025 as 8.79% of the 7.13 cap growth from this year to next year in 2025 of $273.6 million. And then when the cap grows another 7.13%, again, those are overly conservative numbers, and it's supposed to be that way, of $293 million. Your 8.79% cap charge against that would be about $25.5 million. So the point is this. The average investment into the salary cap can stay consistent, but if the salary cap is going to continue to grow at an exponential rate, the cap charges that you are used to seeing as, wow, that's a cap charge that won a Super Bowl at the quarterback position, that is going to grow because the salary cap is growing at a crazy rate. Case in point, you have 4 salary cap charges that exceed $20 million in the last 30 years. In the entire salary cap era, you have 4 salary cap charges of $20 million plus. Matthew Stafford's at $20 million for a quarterback that won the Super Bowl that year. Tom Brady twice, 2018 and 2020 with the Patriots and the Bucks, and Mahomes the last 2 years at 35 and 37. You can say, well, that's great, Kyle, but it's Brady and Mahomes, so that doesn't count, which is why I'm glad you said that, because out of the 20 Super Bowls that have been won in the salary cap era without Brady and Mahomes, the average salary cap investment was 7.27% of the cap. So still, even if you budgeted 7.27%, I'll do the math right now. Times 1.0727. Imagine thinking I was going to get that right on the first try. Let's see, 255.4. This is what I get for doing math in real time. There you go. Even if you take the non-Brady Mahomes, the average salary cap charge against this year gives you a budget of $18.5 million. So it's $4 million less. But again, the point being that $18.5 million budget, as far as like the average investment against the cap to win a Super Bowl, that would still be the 6th highest salary cap charge in the salary cap era to win a Super Bowl. Perception of the dollars versus the reality of the exponential growth of the position is where I think a lot of people, the perspective goes out the window, right? But the last thing I wanted to do on today's show was I wanted to put the numbers in for the proposed Tua Tagovailoa contract that I had back in March. And that was a 5-year, $252 million contract extension at 51. And Jared Goff comes out and gets 53. So I actually did make it to 53 per as well to be an equal number. So it's technically a 6-year deal. I kind of used the structure of the Jalen Hurts contract for the first half of the contract so that there's kind of these prorated player bonuses that are automatically baked into the first 3 years of the contract. And then that gets you through the guaranteed money that gets prorated out anyway. All that to say this. The proposed contract that I had for Tua would put him down for 53.47 million AAV for the new dollars on the deal. I think that the pure, like the true AAV, if you include the 1 year, $23 million that he's already on the books for and accounted for, being added to that would be about $48 million AAV. So there's true AAV, and then there's like the reported new money AAV, which always, it's the funny money that agents love. Point being this: if you gave Tua Tagovailoa a $50 million signing bonus in year one, and again, that's $50 million the way signing bonuses work. You can spread that out across the next 5 years worth of salary cap at equal increments. And then he has like a $1.5 million salary for the year. So he receives $51 million in cash this year. His cap charge in year one would be $11.5 million, right? 1/5 of $50 million is $10 million. And then a $1.5 million charge for his week-to-week game checks. $11.5 million cap charge, in spite of collecting $51 million in cash, is equivalent to 4.5% of the $255.4 million salary cap. So that's half of the average salary cap investment. In 2025, when he gets his next roster bonus and it prorates out across the next 5 years the same way, his salary cap charge would be 8.5% at $23.5 million. And these are, of course, just approximated numbers that I've used, but the point is the same. That's still below the average salary cap investment. And again, I am using as conservative a salary cap growth model as you possibly can, because I'm taking the average across the full salary cap era. Never mind 2 of the last 3 years, it's gone up 14 and 13.6%. And the year in between, it went up 8%. So, like, I'm missing a full percent there. 2026 would be a $33.5 million salary cap charge against the cap. That'd be equivalent to 11.43%. That would kind of get you through the meat and potatoes, the guaranteed dollars of that contract. It's worth noting at the end, when the guaranteed money runs out and it's just your base salaries, the Dolphins can play a lot of fun money with a base salary, whether they can convert it into a roster bonus and kick it back out, whether they can give him a contract extension if it goes well. If things aren't going well in 2027, you can move on and you wouldn't be on the hook for these supersized charges that are around 20% for the back 2 years of the deal. But they might be realistically worth less than 20% if the salary cap grows at a rate that is more aggressive than my very conservative growth model. So we see these numbers now and they're scary. But people would look 6 years ago at the numbers that we're using now and think that that's scary. Because 6 years ago, the salary cap was $177 million. It's gone up almost $100 million since then. So that's what makes, I think, this really fascinating is a contract extension leaves you with 3 years, the next 3 years that are definitively within the strike zone. Because even the 2027 cap charge or the 2026 cap charge on this hypothetical contract extension for Tua Tagovailoa at 33.5%, that would sit at 11.43%. In the grand scheme of like winning Super Bowls, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks that had a percent charge against the cap that's bigger than that. And it wasn't just Brady and Mahomes. Steve Young in 94 had a 13% cap charge. Peyton Manning in Denver, 2015, had a 12% cap charge. Eli Manning in 2011 had 11.7% cap charge. All of those numbers are bigger than the year 3 figure for Tua Tagovailoa. And non-rookie contract quarterbacks, on average of the 23 Super Bowls that they've won, it's 10.4%. So it's in the same ballpark. And after that year, once you get to 2027, you're into, okay, we have non-guaranteed money. We have base salary that we could start to work with that we can finesse if we want to finesse. It's a very different tone than what I think I was expecting for myself, because I know on Locked On NFL Scouting, a lot of the focus that we have is maximizing your window with a rookie contract and how it's this great competitive advantage. Is it really? Because those guys aren't winning Super Bowls. They've won 7 of the last 30 in the Super Bowl or in the salary cap era. Certainly changes my perspective, and it makes the structure of the contract arguably more important than the raw numbers of the contract. How you structure that deal, to me, is where you can make this decision and still leave yourself the investment around that player for the immediate future. And then by the time you get deep enough into the contract, you're going to be able to make a decision to move on or re-extend or do whatever. And whatever you choose to do, because of the growth of the salary cap and because of the way that you structure the money on the front end of the deal versus the back end of the deal, you'll have the flexibility to do it and try to keep yourself competitive without doing what the Dolphins had to do in 2019, which was tear things all the way back down because bad contracts were littered from top to bottom on that roster. This Dolphins contract situation, certainly not the same. But this is one it is important to get right. And all the details of that is probably why this deal's not done yet. Because there's a lot of players want to maximize their value. Teams want to reward the players for the play that they put on the field, but also protect themselves from as many liabilities as they possibly can. It's an interesting talking point, interesting project that I'm really glad that I was spurred into doing. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Make it a great rest of your day. I'm Kyle Krabs, and I am out of here. Fins up.